Segment 1. Welcome to June 27th, the most historically overachieving day ever. Today is June 27th, a day so packed with historical drama, progress, rebellion, and innovation, it makes other calendar dates look like underachievers. You know, some dates just get a birthday or maybe a national pickle day. Not June 27th. No, June 27th looked history in the face and said, "Hold my beer." We've got battles that reshaped continents, riots that launched civil rights movements, video games that hijacked your childhood, and nuclear power plants that gave us both electricity and anxiety. So buckle up. We're diving headfirst into a date that's been out here doing the absolute most. Segment 2, the Battle of Poltava. Russia levels up. June 27, 1709. Russia said, this Baltic monopoly thing? Nah, not anymore. It was the Battle of Poltava. And Sweden, the reigning champ of Baltic domination, came in swinging, well, limping, frostbitten, and very underfed. Charles XII of Sweden showed up with a bold plan that involved storming Russian redoubts like he was speedrunning a suicidal video game level. Spoiler, didn't work. Russia, under Peter the Great, countered with overwhelming force and better planning. Sweden's dreams of empire fell harder than a Jenga tower at a toddler convention. And Peter, he walked away with a shiny new power status, ready to start decorating Eastern Europe in tasteful imperial oppression. This was Sweden's we peaked too early moment, and Russia's villain origin story. The Baltic wasn't ready. Segment 3, the UN Charter. We promise to behave. Pinky swear. Sure, the UN Charter was technically signed on June 26, 1945, but hey, history's sloppy with dates and we're claiming it. This was humanity's attempt to create a no world war zone after 2 catastrophic sequels. It was like getting all the kids who just broke the house to agree on rules while still holding slingshots. The big powers, US, UK, USSR, China, France, became permanent Security Council members because what says equality like permanent veto power? The UN was meant to be peace on paper, but let's be honest, it's been more like peace on probation. And yet, despite the bureaucracy, parking violations in UIC, and general global dysfunction, it's still better than a League of Nations, which folded faster than a lawn chair in a hurricane. Segment 4, the Korean War begins. The UN gets its first pop quiz. On June 27, 1950, North Korea decided borders were optional and invaded South Korea. America and the UN scrambled into action like a sitcom cast realizing the house is on fire. Truman sent in troops, the UN authorized force, and just like that, the Cold War had its first official proxy war on the books. This wasn't just about Korea. It was about containment, ideology, and showing communism the US meant business. It also revealed the UN's biggest secret. It only works if the big powers agree, which is a little like saying your fire alarm only works if everyone in the building agrees there's a fire. The war didn't end so much as pause, and to this day, North and South Korea are still technically at war, making June 27th the start of the longest uncomfortable family dinner in modern history. Segment 5, Slovenia and Croatia declare independence. Yugoslavia hits the fan. June 27th, 1991. Yugoslavia, the multi-ethnic house of cards, finally collapsed under the weight of nationalism, bad politics, and not nearly enough duct tape. Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. And like clockwork, Yugoslav troops showed up to say, no you don't. Slovenia got the 10-day war, brief but bloody. Croatia got a full-on extended nightmare thanks to internal Serb separatists and a federal army that was suddenly Team Serbia. This was the kickoff to the wider Yugoslav wars, a grim reminder that when you suppress ethnic tensions with an authoritarian lid, things tend to explode when the pressure's off. Segment 6, U.S. declared illegal in Nicaragua. International law has thoughts. In 1986, the International Court of Justice had the audacity to tell the U.S., hey, that whole covert paramilitary operation in Nicaragua, yeah, illegal. America was funding Contras to fight the Sandinista government like it was a Cold War hobby project. The ICJ ruling was like a parking ticket from someone who can't tow your car. Symbolic, embarrassing, and promptly ignored. The U.S. basically said, nice opinion, and walked away. But it was a landmark moment. It exposed the friction between international law and superpower behavior. Or put another way, the rules apply to everyone, unless you're holding all the nukes. Segment 7. Stonewall ignites a movement. The Rainbow Revolution begins. June 27th, 1969. Technically, the night before the better-known June 28th riot was when the tension snapped. The Stonewall Inn, one of the few safe-ish places for LGBTQ+ folks, was raided by police again. Only this time, people fought back, hard. It wasn't neat or polite, but it was powerful. What followed was 6 days of rebellion, defiance, and the birth of a movement. Pride wasn't born from permission. It was born from riot, from people saying enough. From that night sprang the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement and organizations like the Gay Liberation Front and PFLAG. Stonewall wasn't the first protest, but it was the spark that lit the fireworks, and they're still going. Segment 8. The nuclear power era begins. Obninsk fires it up. June 27, 1954. Welcome to Obninsk, Soviet Union, where the lights were turned on using nuclear power, and nobody glowed afterward, at least not right away. The world's first nuclear power plant officially fired up its atoms to generate electricity for civilian use. 5 megawatts of quote-unquote peaceful energy, courtesy of the same people who brought you the Cold War, space dogs, and vodka-fueled engineering. It was the USSR's way of saying we can do peaceful nukes too, and it worked for 48 years. Obninsk launched nuclear energy into the mainstream and planted the radioactive seed for hundreds of future reactors around the world. It also planted decades of debates about waste, meltdowns, and whether living near one makes your bananas taste funny. Segment 9. Atari is born. Pong, pixels, and the digital revolution. June 27th, 1972. Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney founded Atari Inc. because what better way to celebrate the Cold War than with animated tennis? Atari didn't just invent Pong, it basically invented our entire relationship with screens that yell at us. Pong was simple: 1 screen, 2 paddles, a square pretending to be a ball, and pure addictive magic. It was digital crack for the analog generation. The company would go on to shape the gaming industry, which has since evolved from pixelated paddles to fully immersive virtual worlds where you can sword fight dragons while arguing with 12-year-olds on headsets. Atari planted the flag, and that flag was made of pure, beautiful ones and zeros. Segment 10. Moby Dick to WallE. Cinema on June 27 hits both ends of the timeline. June 27 is also cinema's day to shine, or at least give us whale metaphors and environmental guilt wrapped in adorable robots. In 1956, John Huston's adaptation of Moby Dick premiered. It tanked at the box office, but swam its way into classic status, proving you can flop hard and still be remembered fondly if your cinematography slaps. Fast forward to 2008, and Pixar drops WallE, a love story about a lonely robot that picks up trash better than most municipalities. It's environmentalism with googly eyes and a soundtrack that makes adults cry into their popcorn. Both films show that June 27 is when storytelling gets bold, weird, and sometimes prophetic. From hunting white whales to cleaning a destroyed Earth, it's cinema's way of saying, maybe listen to the metaphors next time? Segment 11. James Madison's birthday. The Constitution's MVP arrives. Born June 27, 1743, James Madison didn't just write the U.S. Constitution. He practically ghost-wrote the entire American government. He was the Constitutional Convention's Hermione Granger, always prepared, a bit short, and smarter than everyone else in the room. He penned the Virginia Plan, co-authored the Federalist Papers, and then casually wrote the Bill of Rights, like a guy who finishes his group project and then does the extra credit for fun. Later, he became president. As in, hey, I wrote the rule book, now let me run the team. If Jefferson was the poet and Hamilton the hype man, Madison was the policy wonk who made sure the Constitution actually worked. And for that, we say, happy birthday, Nerd King. Segment 12, Joseph Smith's death, faith, fire, and fallout. June 27, 1844, Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, was killed by a mob while in jail in Carthage, Illinois, after ordering the destruction of a newspaper critical of him. This wasn't just a tragic end, it was a seismic religious event. His death triggered a major succession crisis. One church became 2, then 3, then, honestly, it's like the Fast and Furious franchise, but with theology. Today, the LDS Church is massive, influential, and still shaped by that explosive moment. It's a reminder that when faith meets politics, printing presses, and power vacuums, you're going to get a lot more than Sunday school. Segment 13. Helen Keller is born. Inspiration unmuted. June 27, 1880, Helen Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama. She would go on to become one of the most remarkable figures in American history, an author, lecturer, and activist who was both deaf and blind. While most toddlers are mastering peekaboo, Helen was about to master 5 languages without seeing or hearing any of them. She went from isolated to Ivy League graduate faster than most of us learn how to fold a fitted sheet. With the help of Anne Sullivan, possibly the greatest tutor in history, Helen became a tireless advocate for the disabled, women's rights, and social justice. And unlike some politicians, she never had to pretend to read the room because she actually read the world. Her legacy is proof that communication is about more than just sound. It's about persistence, purpose, and learning how to scream with your soul. Segment 14. Djibouti gains independence. Bye-bye, France. On June 27, 1977, France finally let go of Djibouti, ending colonial rule and officially recognizing the small but strategically mighty country as independent. This was one of the final exhale moments of the great post-war decolonization wave. Sure, it's a small dot on the Horn of Africa, but Djibouti sits at the crossroads of Africa and the Middle East, right by the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, aka that one waterway the global economy really cares about. So naturally, it went from French colony to international military Airbnb in record time. Still, Djibouti becoming its own nation was a win for self-determination, local culture, and maps trying to stay accurate for more than 5 years. Segment 15. The Stratford Martyrs, roasting heresy in public. June 27, 1556. In the blood-soaked Reformation drama that was Mary in England, 13 Protestants, men and women, were burned at the stake for refusing to renounce their faith. This wasn't just a punishment, it was theater. 20,000 people reportedly showed up. Nothing says family outing like an execution. Queen Mary I wanted to restore Catholicism, and her solution was more fire, less forgiveness. The Stratford Martyrs would later be honored with monuments, remembered as tragic symbols of religious persecution. Their fate was horrifying, but also galvanizing. And just like every poorly thought out villain plan in a Marvel movie, it backfired. Because nothing boosts Protestant morale like turning your enemies into literal martyrs. Segment 16. The first women's magazine, Tea, Tips, and Typo-Free Enlightenment. June 27, 1693. The first women's magazine, The Ladies' Mercury, was published in London. This was before TikTok, before Cosmo, even before men realized women had opinions about anything besides embroidery. It tackled such daring topics as love, virtue, and occasionally, brace yourself, questions about husbands. While it only ran for 4 issues, it planted the seed for an entire genre of publishing. It was short-lived, yes, but it made a point. Women had questions, interests, and enough sass to deserve their own publication, and eventually their own section in every bookstore, right next to the 50,000 magazines about cars. Segment 17. Color TV gets a test run, seeing red, green, and broadcast potential. June 27, 1929. Bell Labs wowed the world by broadcasting the first public demonstration of color television. It was the technological version of going from sepia to Technicolor. Sure, it wasn't exactly 4K, more like 4 colors, but it hinted at a future where people wouldn't just hear the news, they'd watch it, and eventually scream at it in high definition. This was the first time entertainment got its glow up. Color TV would go on to change how we experience everything from sports to politics to reality shows about people arguing in hot tubs. And it all started with a little lab experiment that taught the world how to see in prime time. Segment 18. Nixon's enemies list goes public. Watergate gets personal. June 27, 1973. John Dean sat before the Senate Watergate Committee and dropped a bombshell. President Nixon kept an enemies list, because what's democracy without a personal vendetta spreadsheet? This list wasn't just a collection of mean tweets. It included journalists, activists, and even actors. Basically, if you had an opinion and a mailing address, you might be on it. Dean's testimony cracked the Watergate scandal wide open. It wasn't just a break-in anymore, it was a break with reality. The scandal eventually led to Nixon's resignation, proving that paranoia and power do not make a charming couple. Segment 19. Tony Blair resigns. New labor, same old stress. On June 27, 2007, Tony Blair stepped down as British Prime Minister after a decade of ruling with charisma, compromise, and several very awkward George W. Bush hugs. His tenure brought peace to Northern Ireland, modernized the Labour Party, and led Britain into the Iraq War, which aged his reputation like a banana in the sun. He handed off the job to Chancellor Gordon Brown, who'd been waiting so long in the political wings he had moss growing on his policies. The moment marked the end of an era. Britain's experiment with rock star prime ministers gave way to accountants in suits. Segment 20. The Cornish Rebellion ends with a hang. June 27, 1497. Two Cornish rebels, Michael Angoff and Thomas Flamank, were executed for daring to say, "We don't feel like paying your London war taxes." Henry VII disagreed, loudly. The rebellion was sparked by a tax levy to fund a war against Scotland. Newsflash, Cornwall wasn't feeling very Scottish. The protest marched all the way to London and then got promptly stomped. But these two rebels were celebrated back home, later becoming symbols of Cornish pride and regional defiance. It's the medieval version of flipping off the king while dressed in chainmail. Segment 21, wrap up. June 27th, history's secret MVP. So there you have it, June 27th, the Swiss Army knife of dates. It's got everything: wars, treaties, rebellions, revolutions, blockbusters, breakthroughs, and people who change the world with typewriters, game consoles, or just the strength of their will. From the battlefield to the big screen, from courtrooms in The Hague to jail cells in Carthage, from the first nuclear watt to the first video game pixel, June 27th keeps showing up with receipts. It's not a holiday, yet, but maybe it should be. Overachievers Day, anyone? Until then, we salute you, June 27th, you glorious, chaotic, overbooked date on the calendar. Never change, or better yet, keep changing everything around you.